My goal in this book is to be provocative about what the climate crisis requires of us. And frankly, I want readers to be shocked, even repulsed by my main character's murder of a fossil fuel executive. But then ask the question, what am I personally willing to do to save our one and only home?
You have devoted the bulk of your professional life, Chuck, to researching, writing about, and organizing around income inequality, tax policy, philanthropy reform, and issues of wealth and privilege. Why the pivot to the climate crisis now?
Well, it's true. My day job is at the Institute for Policy Studies, co-editing inequality.org. So I wake up every morning thinking about, how do we reverse or this concentration of wealth and power? But in a way, it's not really that much of a pivot. As a young boy, I think I became politicized by environmental issues in the early 70s and have been, for 15 years or so, very active addressing climate change issues. I helped co-found a group called Divest Invest to divest investments from fossil fuel. I helped fight a big pipeline infrastructure project coming into Boston a couple years ago. I'm a trustee of the Post-Carbon Institute and the terrific website resilience.org. So, I get up and I think about the intersection actually between extreme inequality and the ecological crisis, which I think is enormous. I think we basically have to address both. We have to sort of like multitask. We have to reduce carbon emissions and pollution while building a more fair and just economy.
Though some argue that all of us in the global north are responsible for the climate crisis, proposition your main character, Rae, accepted to some degree, she laid primary responsibility on the doorstep of a small number of powerful people and industries that have actively blocked meaningful responses. Say more about those who have locked us into this destructive trajectory. And does Rae's extreme action suggest that the moment for nonviolent action alone has passed?
Well, it's true. My main character, Rae, takes a lot of personal responsibility. She thinks that those of us in the United States in the middle class and affluent classes have a huge responsibility because of the amount of carbon and methane that we consume and burn. But when she really gets down to who is responsible for the dilemma we're in, I think over Rae's lifetime, her understanding evolves where she says, well, look, we're not all equally responsible for the ecological dilemma we're in, that there's a couple dozen global companies, energy companies and their investors, and there are probably 50, 60 people who are leading those companies who have known about the dangers of climate change, and yet they have chosen to keep us in this trajectory. And just to be clear, the fossil fuel industry for 50 years has funded denial, trying to get us to not believe the dangers of climate change. They've sowed doubt. They've funded sham science and tried deliberately to kind of confound and cloud up the debate. And when that didn't work, they've delayed acting to address climate change. So in her view, these folks are active perpetrators of crimes against humanity.
You want readers to be shocked, even repulsed by Rae's final act. But not only that, how else do you want readers to engage with this story?
Well, as a work of fiction, I hope it's also just a good story that people will enjoy. There's a lot of parts of the story where people are rethinking their relationship to death and dying, thinking about community resilience and how to build that. But when it comes to this point about Rae's, sort of final act, where she engages in a horrendous murder-suicide, taking the life of the CEO of an oil company, well, that is shocking. And I want people to be repulsed and say, that's wrong. As I believe it's wrong, and it's tactically and strategically and morally wrong. It's not going to move us. But then the invitation is, so if you don't like what Rae did, what bold action will you take? What is required to respond to the challenges of this moment? And so I think Rae would sort of is secretly exhorting us to say, what does that look like for each of us?
You've been listening to a conversation with Chuck Collins around his new novel, Altar to an Erupting Sun.